Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you travel a little smarter and cruise a little smarter. And we are changing our focus today. We are going to talk about a cruise, but I think a little bit different type of cruise today. And joining me to discuss it, coming back once again from Podcast Stardust, he's a huge supporter of our show, a huge Disney Cruise Line fan. Welcome back to the show, Dennis, down in Texas. How are you doing today?
I am doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me back.
Of course. I just got to throw this out here quick. Andor, are you excited?
Very, very excited. And they just announced they're putting Rogue One back in the theaters for a week coming up here. So it's good to have some Star Wars at the theater and good to have more Star Wars come to Disney Plus.
I think I'm going to have to go back to the theater and see that because that is still arguably probably my favorite Star Wars movie is Rogue One. I love that movie.
Yeah, one of my favorites too. Yeah, it's fantastic.
So excited to see Andor and the backstory there too. So what we are going to turn our focus a little bit different today. I think it's been described similar to Disney Cruise Line. It's been out and sailing now for several months now. You and I did some pre-shows with Chris about the Halcyon down there in the Galactic Star Cruiser. Before we bring our guests on, what's kind of your takeaway from after hearing several different people's experiences, Dennis, about the Galactic Star Cruiser?
It's very interesting because it sounds like they really try and give you your own story. And if you're planning on vacationing, don't go to the Galactic Cruiser because you're not going to get to rest. It's a full-time thing. They keep you busy and they keep you immersed is what I've been hearing. And I'm really eager to get in this discussion and find out how true all that is and more about the experience.
Well, let's bring our guest in today. Joining us today, she says this is, well, maybe I shouldn't spoil it and say what she says, but welcome to the podcast. Debbie, we're going to talk about your voyage on the Galactic Star Wars Cruiser. How are you doing today?
I'm just fine, Steve. I thought it was the best thing I've ever done at Disney. And I've never missed a year since the park opened in 1971. So I have some pretty good experience.
So that's saying a lot. And also, how many Disney cruises have you been on?
15.
15. Okay, good. Because so now I'm really curious to see if you really do equate this to Disney Cruise Line a little bit as far as kind of that somewhat of an experience. But
well, and I did Star Wars at sea as one of my cruises. So, I had that experience as well.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, we talked a little bit, I guess, about some of your Disney background. You've been on cruises. You've been going to Walt Disney World since the parks opened. What made you want to go on the Galactic Star Cruiser?
Well, it's because of my love of Disney World. I figured anything that Disney did was going to be done well because unlike Dennis, I'm more of a casual Star Wars fan. Certainly have seen the movies, enjoyed it. I have my Kowakian monkey over my shoulder. So, like Galaxy's Edge. But it was just so intriguing to me to do something that immersive. So the day I could sign up, I called Christy and I signed up.
So how did you hear about it, I guess? How do you get your information as far as Walt Disney World goes? How did you become aware that they were going to have the Star Cruiser?
Probably Christy a little bit, but I think I'm on every Facebook page for Disney World that's out there or for Disney Cruising. So I pretty much monitor anything that's coming up.
Okay, so got to know that this is coming. This is going to be a kind of big deal. It was a little controversial. People were like, "Weren't sure which way it was going to go," and it sounds like it's been just an amazing hit since it started sailing. What did you know before going into this experience?
Okay, I read everything I could possibly read because I thought, it's not cheap. It's pretty expensive. And I thought I want to get the most out of it that I possibly can. So I read everything. I know a lot of people say, I don't want any spoilers. I don't want to know anything. I went exactly the opposite. I wanted to know who the characters were, who the cast members were, what some of the dynamics were. So if Disney put something out, the D23 magazine had an article, anything I could read, I read.
So you were looking at this from the official Disney angle more than necessarily the Star Wars angle. You were kind of looking at it from the logistics of the experiences more as opposed to maybe the in-universe story?
Yeah, absolutely. But now I took my cousin's husband, who is a diehard, probably as big a fan as you are. This is also decorated with Star Wars. So I made sure that I had someone with me who really embraced that whole thing. And I did. I was in costume. I'm wearing one of my little crowns that I wore during the cruise. So I did dress in costume, but they were of my own design and of my own making. I tried to be in universe in concept, but not for a discrete character.
So you made up your own character?
I did.
And, so tell us about your character. What kind of personality did you adopt?
My character I was a retired seamstress from Ithaca. I used my hometown as my planet, but I was a retired seamstress. And my backstory was actually that I had sewn clothing for Lieutenant Croy's grandmother, Lucretia. Lieutenant Croy is, one of the cast members.
Sure.
So I greeted him with that as soon as I boarded. And as soon as he was present, and he embraced it, ran with it. And that really became a focal point of my whole thing. I didn't know if he would, but it was the coolest thing ever that he called me out the entire 2 days for having worked or been friends with his grandmother.
Well, that's incredible. So yeah, tell me more about the costume.
And I said I ran a porg shelter. And I gave away little porgs that I made. So,
a porg shelter.
Well, I needed to be doing something, in the present time. So, and I wanted, like I said, I wanted to embrace Star Wars, but I knew that if somebody would engage me in an in-depth conversation, I would fail. Because I certainly know Chewie. In fact, I got to go on a mission with Chewbacca. But I really just looked at a lot of the women's costumes. And then I spent a good month to 6 weeks planning out the patterns I would use, finding things at Goodwill that I could adapt. In fact, I do this was my favorite costume. And I'm at the bridge on the Halcyon.
Okay.
If you have some of these pictures that you can email me afterwards, I'll put it out so people can see.
Sure, because here is me with Lieutenant Croy. He actually insisted on this picture because he told me I was a vision. It was just so much fun.
Did your cousin's husband dress up as well?
He did. Now, that's actually an interesting story. He has social anxiety. And despite his love of Star Wars, he stayed in the room the whole second day. So it actually taught me a lot that, you need to be sensitive because the stimulation is overwhelming. I mean, it really is. It is beyond whatever I could have anticipated for immersion experience. Now, I've never done anything like that before, but it went so far beyond, and he didn't really even engage, but he couldn't go out onto the ship the second day. So he enjoyed the room.
So obviously you kind of had heard that other people had started doing this, playing in character and coming up with their own characters. And I think that is what, from the few podcasts I've heard talk about this experience, is probably one of the fun things about doing that. And I'm so happy that he embraced you as well and to play along with you during this whole experience.
Yeah. And, I'd say it was about 50-50. And I met a mother and her daughter. They were not dressed up and they still had so much fun because they came to me and they said, "Oh, looking at you, we regret that we didn't come in costume," but they had a wonderful time. So I think for me, I knew that was going to be a big part of it because I could be in character. I wasn't going to be Debbie. I was really Arbid Relum. I reversed my name. So I was Arbid Relum. And I thought the cast and crew members really embraced it too. I mean, there were a lot of Rays. There were a lot of, all the conventional characters that you would kind of expect. And I wanted to stay away from that as well. But certainly people were having so much fun doing everything every character that they dressed up as.
Prior to the cruise, did they give you any guidelines or restrictions about what you could or could not include in your costume?
Yeah, they did. There couldn't be full face painting if you wanted to go out to Galaxy's Edge.
Okay.
So they didn't limit it on board the ship much. I mean, you know how they have that conventional rule about how clothing can't drag on the floor? People's costumes were dragging on the floor on the Galactic Star Cruiser. So they seemed much more relaxed than they were about Galaxy's Edge, certainly, because people were really dressed to the nines, looking like a character that would be in Galaxy's Edge.
Did they prohibit like lightsabers or blasters or anything?
No. You could have you couldn't fight with your lightsaber, but I did one of the photo shoots, the CSL photo shoots that they offer, and you were encouraged to bring your lightsaber.
Oh, cool.
So let's talk about the experience itself, Debbie. You guys get down to Florida. How does it start? I know that I think it starts with the app initially where they start sending you information that way.
Yeah, about a month ahead, they start pushing you information with your tentative schedule for the 2 days. And people get all excited about it because, oh, my lightsaber training is right before my dinner. But it gives you an opportunity to, kind of look at what they're offering. And I don't remember if it included menus because I think I read all of those online on Facebook.
So, and with Disney Cruise Line, a lot of people set up Facebook posts or Facebook groups of, your upcoming sailing. Was there a Facebook group? Are they doing that for the Star Cruiser as well?
Yeah, they're doing that as well. In fact, because I was involved in so much because of, I guess, my Lieutenant Croy connection, people were very gracious and put videos out on the Facebook page for the cruise because I forgot to take pictures. It was so immersive. I was just so involved in everything. I mean, I could not have dreamt it could be any better than it was because I was constantly doing something. The cruise director would be saying, Debbie, we need you to go do this. And somebody else would be saying, Debbie, we need you to do this. So it was just wonderful.
So you called it a tentative schedule. Did you have any influence over when you were going to be able to do certain things, or did they kind of give you a set time for the saber training? And if you couldn't make it, then you were out of luck?
No, they did allow you to change it. I adjusted my bridge training because the bridge training was during something else I wanted to do. I don't even remember now because it was back in May that I went. But yeah, they allow quite a bit of leeway from what I saw. And different people were talking about their ability to change their lightsaber training or their bridge training. So
you guys get down there to start the process and everything like that. Talk about that first day or your first experience as you board the Star Cruiser. Well, of course, you pull up and it's kind of a dramatic entrance. And we were all in line. And even that was fun because you start to interact with the people who are going to be part of your cruise. And that's where I was really aware of just how incredible some of the costumes were. I mean, armor and helmets and all kinds of elaborate cosplay costumes. It was pretty cool. And then essentially you walk through security and then you were on board. You walk into the big atrium and then, it was mostly lunch, getting acquainted. They take you to your room immediately so that you become familiar with the layout of the room. And then it really got underway, I would think, around 3. We got on board around 12:30 to 1. But you go and have lunch. Drinks are available in the lounge.
As part of the getting on process, I've seen a lot of concept art where it looks like you kind of take a simulated shuttle up to the ship. Is that what happened, or how did they get you on the ship? Yeah, you walk into a room that I guess is supposed to be your shuttle up to the ship. Mm-hmm. And they had, nice dramatic artwork as you were navigating up to the ship. Okay, so they did do kind of an artificial... Some people said they didn't think that was done very well. I thought it was fine. I tend to be one of those people who probably thinks too highly of the entire experience. There wasn't much that I found I could criticize. I mean, I thought that was an acceptable way to get us on the ship. Okay, did they pretend you were taking off from Earth, or where did the immersion start? Where was the story part of that? I don't know that there was a story. If there was, I missed it because they didn't tell us we were taking off from anywhere. I don't remember because you're not really in Galaxy's Edge. You're kind of right. So I'm not sure about that. Oh, okay. I mean, you could be from anywhere. Almost everything, but yeah. I mean, you knew where you were headed, but I don't know that I knew where I started from. Well, you started from Athaka. We found that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the cruise, I guess. I've been using that word lately, and I don't even know where it came from. But let's talk about the room. There's several different rooms that you could choose. What did you guys pick, and what did you think of it? I had, I think it was called the 1 bedroom. I didn't have the bunk beds that are in the standard room. I had a bedroom
with, I guess, a queen size bed and then quite a large living room and even a little seating area, like a dining area. So it was large. I mean, I was having been on Disney Cruise, even in a 1-bedroom once or twice on that. I mean, it was a very nice sized room. And one of the people I met took me into her standard room, and that was nice. Smaller, but very nice. Nicely appointed. Bathroom was great.
Did you guys share a room or did you guys have separate rooms?
I let him have the bedroom and then I took the couch.
Okay. So it was one of kind of pull-out couches like they have on the cruise line then too for you?
Kind of like the couch turns into the twin bed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, kind of like that. It pulled down out of the wall, but it was about the couch that turns into a bed.
I've seen a number of rooms that have had bunks in them, and they've been promoting those quite a bit. Did your room not have those, and then the standard room did, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are only in the standard room.
And what did you think about the size of those? Because it's been really hard to tell from the pictures about whether an adult could sleep in those or not.
Well, and of course, I'm on every Facebook page known to man. So people claim that their 6'1" husband can fit in them. When I went in there, I made sure I really peeked into it. And it was big. I think it's because it has that kind of like framing on the outside that hides some of the depth of the bed.
Oh, okay. I've seen also lots of images of portholes in these rooms. It looks like you're looking out into space. So what was that like? How immersive was that?
I thought it was very nice. We had two because there was one in the bedroom and then one in the living room because of, being in the larger room. But otherwise, the standard rooms had one. And you watched planets go by, ships that are sailing out in space. So there was always something to look at. You could turn it off because it had bright white lights around it. So the only way to turn that off, you had to turn off the entire display of that was kind of the one thing that I think if you could change, people might want the white lights off and be able to watch space moving by, but it was an all or nothing to turn it off. But yeah, I would be on the couch and just enjoying because I couldn't sleep. I was just so excited about everything that was happening. I couldn't sleep. And so I would watch space and watch ships go by. And
not to put you on the spot because you described yourself as more of a casual Star Wars fan, but did you recognize any of the planets or any of the ships, or was there anything that really stood out to you that was in that porthole?
I did not, but my cousin's husband certainly did. Okay. Yeah, he pointed out a few to me.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. And even when doing the bridge training, he told me how he recognized, because he and I did different bridge training. He did go to that because that was his first day. And yeah, he made it to bridge and lightsaber now that I think about it. So, but yeah, he recognized a lot of the things that they were showing because I made sure that I asked him because I wanted to kind of get a feel of what, a diehard Star Wars fan experienced too, and not just somebody who was there more for the overall experience.
Was there any noise at all when you were looking out at space? I mean, I know space is quiet, but we were just on the Wish in the hyperspace lounge, and every time it would jump into hyperspace, it would make this really loud noise in the room. My guess is they're not doing that in your stateroom, but was there any noise associated with it?
Not with the windows in the portholes in the room.
Okay.
Certainly, if you were on the bridge, you would hear that noise.
Any other questions about the room, Dennis?
Well, your cousin's husband spent a lot of time there, and it's unfortunately he had that anxiety. But was the room itself, when he spent all day there, was he able to keep himself entertained, or was he? How did that go for him?
He told me that he actually enjoyed it a lot because and I forgot the name of the droid that you can interact with in the room. He said he spent a lot of time interacting with her.
Oh, okay.
And cool. Engaging with her. And she told him a lot about the ship and they played some games. So he felt that he benefited in different ways than I did from the experience.
Maybe this might be a closing question, but did he feel like it was pretty authentic since he was like such a diehard Star Wars fan? Did he feel like he was really in space and everything?
He told me that he thought the ship experience was absolutely incredible. And that if he had it to do again, he would have done what I had done and really prepped and learned what was going to be the experience, because he knows that he made sure he didn't know anything and then was overwhelmed with all of the stimulation. But he ended up telling me that he thought all in all, it was a very positive experience despite the social anxiety.
Well, that's good to hear too for him then. So I'm glad he had as good of an experience as you did. Before we turn to the actual, kind of as the story starts, let's just talk about the food real quick. What was your overall thoughts about the food? You've got the dining room, you've got the lounge that you can go into as well. And then also when you're down at Galaxy's Edge, you can eat there at places that I know a lot of other people have been to. But what was your overall thoughts of the food?
Well, I didn't use my food coupon for Galaxy's Edge because I went back to the ship and had lunch on the ship. Breakfast and lunch were buffet. You could just walk up and pick. They were all in little plates. I liked breakfast and lunch a lot. Dinners, I was okay with. Dinners felt rushed. I had captain's table the second night, which is a extra add-on that you can do. But they felt rushed to me because they'd bring out whatever you were eating. And it seemed like just minutes later, the food was all good. It was all interesting. It was colorful because, of course, the blue shrimp are quite well known. I enjoyed it. I can't say I loved it, but I enjoyed it. But the dinners, like I said, felt rushed.
Where they've made a big deal about the dinners and how themed the food is. And you mentioned the blue shrimp there, but was that the same type of style that was available on the buffet, or was that more of an everyday type of an item? Or could you recognize the food? Because Star Wars is known for some of its crazy things that they feed people.
Well, they all had unique names, of course. But like the bantha beef was really good. There were dumplings that were blue and green and bright yellow. So you could recognize the food and they told you what it was. But, like the blue shrimp was different. Everything was different. Like you had some gazpacho and it came in a tall test tube for the second night. But yeah, it was recognizable.
Did you think that the captain's upgrade was worthwhile to do that? Did that add to your experience?
Well, it did because of Lieutenant Croy giving me a hard time because he sat down next to me at the captain's table and told everybody on the ship how awful I was. Because by that point, he kept asking me for his allegiance because he said, you knew my grandmother. You must, be siding with me and blah, blah, blah. I'd say, I'm sorry, I have to go. Because I made sure that he knew that I didn't come out and say, well, no, of course not. But then we became mortal enemies. But the table has this big round thing that prevents you from seeing people at the table. So I really didn't care for the design of the table itself. I'm not sure why they built it the way they did. But because it's part of the story the second night, I'm glad I had it.
Well, let's kind of turn to the experience itself. You said it started at about 3, and just for everybody listening, we will probably be talking about some spoilers. So if you don't want to know about some of the things that happen on board the Star Cruiser, maybe this is the time to stop and go experience it yourself. But Dennis, why don't you take us into the experience?
Okay, so you said you got on there a little afternoon, and then the experience really got going a few hours later. But what was the atmosphere like there in the atrium? What kind of characters around? Were they setting up the story, or when exactly did the story begin?
Yeah, they started to set up the story. The cruise director, Lenka Mock, was around. The Captain Keevan, was around. I think even more than that, there were guest services, and the guest services people are outfitted in this blue uniform, and they would engage you and talk about this was the 275th anniversary of the ship, to kind of point you out to the different things on the ship, and even the little terminals where you could take your magic band and touch the terminal, and you'd get more information on your data pad, your phone. So they made sure that everybody was up to sync on all of the logistics of it. There were sabacc classes in the lounge for people who wanted to take that. And then it really seemed to commence more with, and then the shop was open. Of course, that was a big deal. Everybody's in the shop buying the stuff you can only buy there, which was a lot of fun. And then you met SK620, the droid that works with Lenka Mock, the cruise director. And then it just kept morphing into, they alerted us that they had word that the First Order was going to board the ship, and this had never happened before. And then Lieutenant Croy and the stormtroopers come on. So then that he's on board the ship, and then he comes down, and that's when I had that opportunity to interact with him and really set the stage for my 2 days. I found that for me, the data port wasn't used as much, or the data pad wasn't used as much as they were calling out to me and engaging me in activities. And since I went, I've noticed how many people say, make sure you engage with the crew. I think that's really a critical recommendation or piece of advice. Just talk to them. Sammy joined. Sammy's the engineer, and it's his first day on the ship.
As they're guiding you through your day, how often is it? Because I've seen images of like a captain's toast there in the atrium. How often is it that they're bringing you all back together for big moments versus separating you out to go do your different activities?
That initial greeting, the first night, I think, was probably the only time we were together. And then certainly the finale, the second day. Generally, you were out on missions. And when I got back and started reading Facebook posts more closely, because now I knew what I was reading about, I cannot believe how many stories there were ongoing or how many missions. I thought I was busy every minute of the 2 days. I mean, I would swear to you that I was engaged in something unique, except when I went out to Galaxy's Edge, when you do your visit out to Batu. Otherwise, I was constantly on missions. And I know that I probably only touched a tiny, tiny fraction of all of the ones that people were engaged in.
How clear is it to you that you're setting down a particular path, maybe helping out the resistance versus the First Order? Because you've been talking about Lieutenant Croy and how he was giving you such a hard time from the decisions you were making there. How obvious was it to you which decision you were making? Did you have people that were outing themselves as members of resistance and asking for your help, or how did that work?
Actually, Lieutenant Croy, because of the data pad, was asking me to perform missions on behalf of him. Mm-hmm. And I went down to the electronics room, and there were 2 crew members there. And I said, I just got a mission to come down here for Lieutenant Croy, and I really, really don't want to do anything for Lieutenant Croy. So I made sure that I also set it up that I didn't want to do anything for him. I am a huge fan of his, but I did not want to do any mission that would help him. So they told me to go talk to Lenka Mock, the cruise director, or to the captain, and let them know that I didn't want to be part of anything for Lieutenant Croy and the First Order. So I think that I was headed down the path of the First Order, and then made sure that I talked to people, because that's not where I wanted to be. And I knew that my conversations with Lieutenant Croy probably were what contributed. They all have earpieces. I want to know now the behind the scenes part of it, because I was utterly fascinated. I mean, I went to help Ray come on board the ship, and she ran up to me and said, "Debbie, do this. Can you do this for me? Can you hide this for me?" And I realized only after I got home that Ray had called me by name. I hadn't seen Ray. So then you start thinking, oh my goodness, that means then you think about the communication that's behind the scenes and all the logistics. But everybody seemed to be, as we would wind up back in the atrium and just conversing with the other passengers, it was just amazing to hear the different things that people had participated. Like, I didn't go to the brig. Lots of people went to the brig and helped Chewie get out of the brig. I never even saw that. I don't have a clue. And there were other things. There's the manager of Gaia, the performer. He's a smuggler, and he has a lot. I wasn't engaged with him one bit. So it's amazing to me the breadth and scope of the experiences that the 200 to 400 people have. And I'll tell you, it felt like 4 days. I kept thinking, I'm spending this much money for 2 days. It felt like 4 days.
So did these missions take you off of your itinerary ever? Because you're talking about wandering all over the ship, whether it's engineering or back to the atrium to talk to the cruise director. And, you sound incredibly busy. I mean, did you ever have to stop something to get back on schedule, or did you just let things go by?
I let things go by. Yeah, there were things. I made sure that I did change my bridge training to accommodate some other mission I had been on. That's why when you asked, did they make allowances for you? They did. And then I was on a mission to help to get a message from Chewie to take back to the cruise director. And I thought I was going to miss this walk down the road. They have a red carpet, and you can walk in it's a regalia. You can walk in your costumes down this red carpet. And they were like, no, you won't miss that. So they held it so that I got to be the last person to go because I was on a mission with Chewbacca. I felt, even though I didn't really ever make any real requests to the staff or to the crew, I thought they were very accommodating.
More specifically, let's say like the lightsaber training. You've got that on your itinerary. How did they bring that up in the course of a cruise? Because that's not just something I would expect to I'm here for vacation. I'm going to now train in a lightsaber. How do they work that type of a thing into the story?
I don't think they worked it into the story so much as it was an opportunity that was pre-planned.
Okay.
Your bridge training and your lightsaber training were both planned. You could go visit the climate simulator, and I understand that there were all kinds of fun experiences there as well. And those were not scheduled, but everyone was scheduled for those two.
So did you end up like having holes in the schedule that you could, were these type of missions presented to each other, or how rigorous was it? Were they playing? Your day sounds insane with how busy you've been.
It was absolutely insane. The only rest I had was when I went to Galaxy's Edge because that was peaceful.
And that's hardly a respite.
That's why I want to go again, and I want to kind of sit back. I mean, truly, they engaged me every minute in something. I mean, I could not believe it. And, having talked to others who have gone and on Facebook, it sounds like that's pretty much everybody's experience, but yet their days are different.
So why don't we talk just real quick about those two experiences, bridge training and lightsaber training. What was that like? And did you enjoy them?
I did enjoy them. Bridge training was a lot of fun. There were maybe 4 different stations across the bridge, and they rotated you from one station to another, and you learned different skills, kind of like a video game. Some people have said it's kind of hokey. I thought it was very cool, and everybody who was with me thought it was cool. So you're engaged in shooting down ships, and I don't even remember all of the 4 different activities, but I had a big group. So that also helped because you felt the camaraderie of being with this group of people. We were all on the same mission. We were there to, ensure that the Halcyon went sailing through space safely and that we took out all these ships. My lightsaber training was only me and my cousin's husband. So I wish I could have seen it where there were more people, because all we did was just rotate. He would shoot at or, try to knock out lights that were flashing on the wall, and then I would do it, and we just alternated 3 or 4 times. So it wasn't as interactive or as dynamic as other people have been describing. I think maybe you need to have the more people there for that as well.
Was this because you got off on a mission, or?
No, that was our scheduled time. So I don't know if other people opted out of that scheduled time, because it was late. I think it was late the first day, because I ended up doing my bridge training the second day.
So it sounds like some of these experiences are a little more fun when you have more people involved with you. I
think so. Yeah, I think lightsaber training would have been fun having. I think there were about 4 pods that you could have stood on to do the lightsaber. And I think just seeing other people doing it would have been fun to observe. So did you get to go back to engineering after you told them that you didn't want to do anything for Lieutenant Corps? Did you ever make your way back there? Yeah, I had to go. I was told when Lenka asked me to go get a message from Chewbacca, and she said, bring back the message. And I said, well, I'm not going to understand Chewbacca. She said, no, you can do a video. I'm like, oh, duh, of course I can do a video. So she said, I understand he's going to be in engineering in a few minutes. So I went down there and grabbed him as soon as he came in, and he took me off to a corner so that I could do a video of him with whatever the message was to Lenka. And then I went back up. So that was the only other time. I did have one prescribed mission where you do the levers and you connect plugs and things, but most of my time down there was more interacting with crew and cast. So that first day kind of culminates, I know, into kind of a dinner show. Could you talk a little bit about that? I've heard that that's a really amazing experience too. It is. Gaia performs, and she has an accompanist named Wani, who's a Rhodian. I think that's the right planet. And then it's her manager, Wraith, who actually engages in a lot of the stories. But Gaia performs up on a stage and very fun music. And then she walks around the room because it's a sizable room and visits with people at the different tables. So you get an opportunity to be up close with her. And then she did go to the atrium and pose for pictures, and she had an autograph session.
The other portion of the entertainment I was curious about is Sabak, the card game that they go on now. My understanding is it's an electronic version on the Halcyon. Did you get an opportunity to play, or did you participate in the tournament?
No, I didn't. I watched them. Okay. The table was always full, and I wanted to watch it. I did learn to play because they had lessons, but I learned with the regular card set. Okay. I didn't learn with the electronic, but it was a lot of fun. Even I think there were only four or six seats around the table.
Oh, they only had one?
Yeah, they only had one table.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's limited.
Did the Sabak, or were you aware did it figure into any of the missions or any of the stories or anything, or is it just more of a side entertainment item?
I think it's side entertainment, but I can't say that for a fact. It didn't come into anything I did, so I don't know.
The lounge, the Starlight Lounge. I don't think we had an opportunity to show about that. Did you make your way over there at all?
Yeah, that's where the Sabak table is.
Oh, okay.
Is in the lounge. So I made sure I tried the fiery Mustafarian and the other drinks that are known so that I could bring home the souvenir glasses. I've been to Oga's 2 or 3 times in Galaxy's Edge, and I thought it was a good compliment for the look and feel of what I would want it to be like. I'm a little worried, Steve. I heard you say about the hyperspace lounge on the Disney Wish, and it looks like it's not going to be as cool as the Sublight Lounge. But even the bartenders all stay in the story. They just keep you moving through the story and through the experience. They never talk about real life or anything. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, not to get sideways there, but I don't know, because there's no real story around the hyperspace lounge. You probably miss out on that. I mean, they were dressed up in different outfits when you went in there, and we didn't really talk to the bartender, but our server that came by, she didn't really have any story or anything like that, just serving you drinks. So, and right now, as you get your 45 minutes, so they're kind of trying to get you in and out of there so quickly that there's probably not time to have that. Maybe, maybe something in the future they can add to it. But, well, I guess I have one other question kind of along this. So you don't seem like a very shy person. You just engaged right away, and you came up with the backstory and everything like that to kind of have a little bit of fun while you're on here. I've been in situations like this where you put together with a group and you go through this very intense experience when I was in the military, and you kind of bond together so easily. And it's weird how that happens, where you're almost like friends within just a couple of days. Was that kind of like this experience too, even though you're running back and forth, but having those moments where you're talking to other passengers in the lounges or wherever else, did that really kind of gel like that?
It does. No, it absolutely does. I mean, there was one man and his wife, he kept calling me his hero for taking on Lieutenant Croy. And we've continued to converse on Facebook. There were several couples. In fact, they had started chanting my name the second night dinner, Debbie, Debbie. And they also did it during the finale. And I think I know who started it. It was one of the people I met, who again was very delightful. So yeah, I bet there were probably 4 to 5 people easily that you did feel like you had that closer interaction than it. Well, and this is what Disney World to me really feels anonymous most of the time, because you don't really engage. And I think that's another thing that set Galactic Star Cruiser apart is I never felt anonymous. Whether it was with other guests or with the crew and the cast. I mean, you felt like you were an important part of the story. And I think everybody who wanted to certainly would have felt that way. But yeah, I have made so many good friends on Disney cruises. Next week when I go on the Wish, I'm meeting up with a lot of them. So it did remind me more of a Disney cruise in that respect, that you just, you become familiar with the people that you're seeing. And even though it's only 2 days, you do establish that kind of relationship with them.
I kind of had a hunch that beforehand when I know the show that we did, Dennis, that they had an opportunity to do that. And I love the fact that it's kind of going out that way. And if you want to not engage, just sit back and watch. You can watch it. And it sounds like people are having just as much fun doing that too.
Well, yeah. And, it was funny because I went back to the room the first night and thought, oh my goodness, here I'm the 66-year-old woman and they engaged me in everything under the sun. And did I take away from other people's opportunities? Did I step in? And then I thought, no, they called on me to do stuff. And I think that's what was, because I don't look like I'm terribly shy, but I really am. And I would have stood back, except they were pulling me into it. And I knew that going dressed up was going to help encourage that kind of interaction. People, when I walked out the last day and I was in my normal, people were like, you don't look like the person we've been spending time with. I'm like, no.
That brings up a point. So it sounds like you don't really have to compete for attention from the crew and the cast there, that they work hard to keep you involved. And there's not going to be one person who's going to hog the spotlight for the various activities and missions that are on board.
That was certainly my take on it, because I did worry that I had hogged things inadvertently, but I don't think I did. I think I was just very fortunate. And then talking to people on my cruises page, as well as other cruises, I think that if you want to be engaged, you do have that opportunity to feel like you're really a vital part of the story. And that's, like I said, I feel anonymous when I go to Disney World, but you sure didn't feel anonymous on this. But you could be if you'd wanted to. Because you did see, when I would go through the atrium, you would see a handful of people who were always just sitting there on a bench. And I think that was how they chose to participate on the cruise.
Well, let's move to day 2 then. You do a port excursion, I guess, or a port adventure to Batuu. Let's talk about how day 2 unfolded.
So, of course, you had breakfast and then you got on the shuttle, and it's a much longer ride. It's about 10 minutes to get over to Batuu. And what's kind of cool is they give you, because it was only May, but of course it's Florida, so it was already hot. And then you do get Lightning Lane for Rise of the Resistance and Millennium Falcon. So we did those. And then my cousin actually did get out that day because his wife and daughter were over at Slinky Dog. So he went over to Slinky Dog and I did the missions, because on your data pad, there were missions that you could participate in. There was a mission at Oga's, but I went back on board the Halcyon by probably 12:30, because I'd been to Galaxy's Edge before. So I didn't have to do the droid. I already had a droid. I already had a lightsaber, had already been drinking at Oga's a few times. So I wanted to go back on board the ship and get my lunch there. But it was fun, because they do give you a custom pin to wear when you're on Batuu, so that the cast members on Batuu or on Galaxy's Edge know that you're part of the Halcyon. And so they engage you a little bit more.
When it comes to these missions on Batuu and Galaxy's Edge, are they critical to your experience there in day 2, or are these things that you feel like you can just put aside if you want to spend more time on the Halcyon?
Mine could have been put aside because, again, a lot of my storyline came from the crew members. Mm-hmm. But I know that people were there to retrieve contraband and take it back to the ship. So some people did have very vital stories that were part of their mission on Batuu. But mine were not. Mine were more doing the puzzles that are just part of the routine kind of games you can play on Galaxy's Edge.
Okay, so, when you're on a Disney cruise and you sail down to the Bahamas and you dock at Nassau and you've been there before, a lot of people don't want to get off the ship and they come back. When you are in the Halcyon and you go to Galaxy's Edge and you decide you had enough and you want to go back to the ship, what do they have going on during the day? Is it a quiet time, or do they have more missions, or is it just kind of you to go play sabacc, or what do you do if you're not interested in spending all your port time in Galaxy's Edge?
It was a quiet time. I mean, I did go to the Sublight Lounge, and that's actually when I learned to play sabacc, because the mother and daughter that I had met, they asked me to join them at a table and they taught me how to play it. I do know that they after I went, they started like a flight of drinks, kind of like you have the mixology classes on the Disney cruise. It was like one of those that you could pay for. And that I think was scheduled at 12:30 the second day. And it's, limited number of people can attend that. So there were a few things. I know that there were several things in the kids club, the Lothcat group, that they could participate in that were ongoing during the time that people were at Batu.
So back up, there's a kids club. I don't think I've ever heard of this on Halcyon before. So you could just drop off the kids if you had them.
Apparently.
That's news to me. I'd not heard of that before. Today's the first time I've ever heard of it.
I didn't read a lot about it, but I know that they had their own lightsaber training. So I don't know how far it went. I don't know if the parent had to stay with the child, but there was a big banner of a Lothcat, and that was where they, I don't think it goes as far as Oceaneer Club, but, sure. And that's when I did my shopping because the store was open.
Well, let's talk about the merchandise. What did you get that you were excited about?
Well, a lot of stuff was out of stock still because this was 2 months after it opened. But I got a jacket and a shirt and some pins. Of course, there's some secret pins you can get if you know the message to give the crew. And I think I got a little model of an SK-620, the droid. I didn't buy any of the fancy lightsaber hilts or anything. There were things I wish I had bought. And of course, you can only buy it then. So that's really a regret I have. I've been looking on eBay for some of what I wanted. And, it's 3 times the price now. So I guess I'll have to wait until I go back.
That's always the way. So the merchandise that was there available in the ship, is it akin to what you would find in Galaxy's Edge, or is it more like what you would find on your way out of Star Tours?
Neither. It does. Okay. Nothing says Star Wars on it.
Okay.
It's only the Chandrilla Star Line.
So they keep it in universe.
Yeah, they sure do. Nothing like this. This is a notebook I bought. This is where I recorded all of my notes from the trip, and everything is the Chandrilla Star Line. So the emblems on the shirts. Now this shirt that I'm wearing, which you can't see, but it's Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser. They had a small shop open the morning you departed. And that's the only time you can buy anything that says Star Wars on it. Okay. Because they won't even they don't know what Star Wars is when you're on the ship. Somebody mentioned, I remember overhearing a conversation where somebody talked about Disney. Of course, they have no clue what Disney is. They don't know what DCL is. If you talk, because they asked if you've done any cruises. And I mentioned I had done, some ocean cruises with Disney Cruise Line. I said, never heard of that. We don't know what that is.
Sketchy group there, huh?
But the only place to get, so they don't even mention Star Wars. It's not.
They keep that in character. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that they keep it like that. And I think that's just like a special memento to bring back and, kind of really, I'm trying to find the right words for it, but to really like cement that experience that you had, that you were really there, which you were.
Yeah. And I think that was a big part of it because, it's all part of that immersion. So not only was I engaged in all of these missions and interacting with guests and crew, but the merchandise even was something I wasn't going to buy. I wanted to buy one of everything, but I did have constraint and probably didn't buy nearly as much as I wish I had bought. I'll make up for it on the Wish next week.
I'm sure you'll have plenty of opportunities. So that brings up another point. Your cruise fare gets you your 2 nights on the Halcyon, gets you your trip to Galaxy's Edge, and you mentioned a food voucher there. And right. It sounds like all your meals are included. You mentioned there was an upcharge if you wanted to send it at the captain's table, and then, of course, merchandise. What type of other add-ons are there on the Halcyon that you either did or did not take advantage of?
Yeah, I did they call it the CSL photo shoot, which until yesterday was only $99, which was incredibly cheap because you got a 20-minute photo shoot with professional lighting and all, and you got between 40 and 50 pictures from that photo shoot. They've now raised it to $399.
Wow.
30 minutes just yesterday. So I'm glad. I don't know if I would have done it for $399 because I don't really like my picture taken, but that was an incredible deal. And I think almost everybody took advantage of that. And that's probably one reason it went up. And then, of course, they have now started doing face painting that you can have as an add-on that came after my trip. And then that like mixology class came after my trip. But the only thing that I am aware of was captain's table. Of course, any drinks you wanted to buy and take home the glass, and the photo shoot.
Were the glasses different than what you could get at Olga's then? Did they have any like ones just for the Star Cruiser?
Yeah, the fiery Mustafarian, at least that's what I was told, is unique to the Sublight Lounge. And then there's another one with a gold pedestal. I don't remember what I had in that one. And they're both unique to the Halcyon.
They had two on the Wish, and I can't remember. The one that everybody wanted, the Porg one, they were out of, and the one that they had, nobody wanted. So I can't. It'll be interesting to see what you find on the
You didn't have the $5,000 drink? So
no, I didn't have the $5,000 drink.
I don't plan to have it next week either, so I won't be able to report about it.
Well, I would love to be able to go out to the ranch out there in California. I think that would be
Skywalker Vineyards.
Yeah, that's got potential to be a lot of fun. Well, let's kind of finish it up then. You can say, I guess, as much as you want to, but how does it kind of end then? I guess the story picks up after everybody comes back on board. How does the cruise end?
Well, it ends, of course, because I helped to bring Rey on board. And of course, there's a battle with Rey and Kylo Ren, and there's a lot of special effects. And of course, Lieutenant Croy loses. First Order loses. The Resistance wins. Somebody on Facebook asked if it ever ends any other way. And of course, it's not going to end any other way. But it's so much chaos, but at the same time, so much to watch. And then it ends, there is a dessert buffet at the very end, and then it's kind of over. I actually, because they said that it had been so unusual, nobody had ever been chanted for before. At the end, I got to do a 5-minute interview with Disney marketing because they showed my video, or they showed my interview at the Star Wars Celebration, which I think you went to, Dennis, right?
I did. I didn't get to see any of the Halcyon content there, but they did. They had an entire booth set up for it.
Yeah.
Where they were trying to sell voyages there.
Well, and I know that they actually used it because somebody on Facebook said, I saw your interview at the celebration. So I even thought that was pretty cool that, they were acknowledging the passengers who they knew had outstanding experiences. So I don't know if they do that pretty often and do interviews, but it ended. Then the one man who told me I was his hero, he and another guy were buying me drinks in the Sublight Lounge. So that's actually how my cruise ended.
Sounds like a pretty good way to end.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was, I can't imagine that I could ever do anything more fun than that. I mean, it was so crazy.
So with the chaos going on, did you feel like you could see well and kind of take in everything that was kind of going on? Probably, I'm sure you're not going to see everything, but.
No, I wish I had been standing back further. That last day, I was asked by the captain to distract the stormtroopers. So I was right below the balcony that rings the atrium, distracting the stormtroopers, talking to them and engaging them. And then all of this other activity happened. So I was right there, right below. And I wish, there's where if I go back a second time, I want to be further back in the room so that I can really observe it all, because I was actually too close to the action at that point to see it. But you still knew what was going on. You could see Rey battling Kylo. But yeah, if I go back, I would stand back further during the finale.
Did you hear by chance from anyone in your Facebook group that was perhaps following the First Order path in those missions, how they felt about the end? I mean, did it take away from their experience at all, or did they enjoy it as just as much, or what did they think about being on the losing side, in quotes?
They knew they were going to lose, so it was okay. But most of the people who said they were First Order that I've been reading about say that they embrace it and love it just as much.
That's good.
Yeah, so I'm not, and I think they knew, certainly that they were probably going to lose. But Lieutenant Croy, I know there's 4 actors who play him. It's such a dominant character. You have to at least embrace some of First Order just because he's such a great character. They've done a terrific job with him. I have read that people think sometimes the kids monopolized it. that maybe they didn't get as many missions as they wanted. I would love to talk to them one-on-one, because I know from my own experience, I can't imagine having engaged in anything else. Did I miss out on things I've heard about? Of course. I bet you could. Well, I've been reading that some people have gone 5 times. I guess if you go that many different times, you intentionally choose a path.
Mm-hmm.
And, then do get to engage in other missions. But I just thought, I'm going to let it ride. Whatever happens, happens. I didn't really, other than I didn't want to follow the First Order. I just kind of went with the flow, and it was.
Do you think you'd ever change it up and to do the First Order just to see what happens?
Oh, if I had the same Lieutenant Croy. I debated because I thought I really liked his interaction with people was just so great. Oh yeah, I think I could easily go First Order if I was tempted, except that inside most of my costumes, I had a resistance decal that I could flash whenever I needed to. But I could have gone First Order.
And then how does the very last day you go, you get that evening, you're being celebrated in the Sublight Lounge as being one of the heroes to take down Kylo Ren in the First Order. How does that last day work then when you guys get off? Do you just get up and get breakfast, or how does that work?
Yep. And then walk out and you see the people that, you've been spending the days with, and they really were like, wow, we can't believe that's what you look like. Because I decided to invest in professional hair and makeup. I had it done the morning of the event. And I think that really paid off too, because I think it showed that I was there to play. And it was. I thought I want this to be a really wonderful experience. So
was it as sad as like leaving a Disney ship when you left?
Oh yeah, I think even worse. I actually thought. I thought that I was unique maybe in feeling like withdrawal and feeling almost a sense of depression about it. It's over. This wonderful, wonderful thing has ended. But I see it repeatedly on Facebook that people can't believe it ended, and how they feel just kind of disoriented for a few days because they want to be back with it. They want to embrace it, because it's, as much as I love Disney cruises, and I love them a lot, I would go on this again in a heartbeat, even though I know it's very story driven. Where a Disney cruise, I can sit in a chair for, 7 days if that's what I feel like. But I think that because you're so immersed, there is a letdown. You're back to the real world. You're back to a taxi taking you wherever.
You're back to your Uber driver taking you to MCO, which you don't want to go to.
It was good.
So I have one other question before we finish up. It sounds like this is something that you want to do again, obviously. And we talked about there's like so many different paths and everything like that. Is there anything that you would change to the experience, or do you think that Disney could change to make it even better? Or how could they even take it to another level, or a different storyline, or anything along those lines? Anything pop in your mind in any of that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because I'm reading a lot about that. I think they'll have to change the storyline after a certain amount of time, because there are people who are doing it multiple times. And I know a lot of people would like the classic Star Wars versus, Rey and Kylo. For me, I don't think there could be, I was so immersed. I can't even begin to guess at what I would want to be different. I know that what I would do differently the second time is try to be more deliberate, because I wasn't deliberate. I said I was going to go with whatever happened, and whatever happened was so incredible that it just kept moving along. I would want to be more deliberate and take more pictures and be more aware of what's going on with others as well, and not just focus on my own story. And I guess for advice, I think for me, it worked out knowing what was going to happen. I cannot imagine going into that 2 days without having any sense of what you were going to experience and getting the maximum benefit from it. And I know there's always that question of, spoilers versus no spoilers, but I think you can read enough about it without getting the actual spoilers. And I think that, again, for me at least, I think that would be vital to knowing kind of what I'm going to get. Like I know everything about the Wish, I think, right now before I get on board. But I think that based on some of the disappointments that I've seen people express, I think that kind of goes hand in hand with that if you have your heart set on a mission, you might not get it, or maybe you have to talk to guest services because, if you go in there with a preconceived idea of what you're going to experience, and then it doesn't take you down, it may take you down the path you want, but may not take you to the exact experience that you've read about and you want, you better talk to guest services and see if they can do anything for you. But, like I said, I just went with the flow. Whatever was going to happen was going to happen. I thought maybe I'd be reading a book back in the room. That never happened, certainly. And then I do think the other point early on, one of you said about being tired afterwards. Oh my goodness, are you tired? So yeah, don't plan for a full day in the parks the last day. Probably go sit by a pool somewhere.
Dennis, any final questions?
No, I'm good. This is exciting. I'm so glad that I got to hear this story and being able to ask questions about the experience, because what you've explained in the past hour we've been talking is a far better promotion than I think anything that Disney's actually put out there, because they've only been able to touch tangentially on some of the experience because they are trying to preserve the non-spoiler aspect of it. But you just don't get a full idea of what you're getting yourself into unless you've talked to someone who's done it.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with us today. We really enjoyed it. Thank you for being so eloquent and with all your experiences. It's like Dennis, I think we'd both love to board the Halcyon tomorrow if we had the opportunity. But thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
And I want to wish you all the best on the Wish. I think you're going to love her. She's a little bit different than the other ships, and that is not in a bad way. I think that you're going to find a lot of just amazing things that they've developed with Disney Cruise Line on the Wish.
I think so too. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, if you want to come back on and talk about your experience on the Wish afterwards, if you enjoyed this, we'd love to have you back on. But otherwise, we want to wish you all the best. And we look forward to hopefully sailing with you either on the Halcyon or on one of those beautiful Disney ships with Disney Cruise Line.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dennis, for helping me out with this. I know you and Jay run an amazing podcast over there featuring all things Star Wars over at Podcast Stardust. If people want to connect with you and your show, can you let them know where they can find you as well?
Certainly. So yeah, Podcast Stardust, it's a 3 times a week podcast. We're talking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. And you can find it on whatever podcatcher it is that you're using on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're at Podcast Stardust. Yeah, like I said, we'll actually probably in a couple weeks' time have a review of The Princess and the Scoundrel, which covers Princess Leia and Han Solo's trip on the Halcyon. So if you want to get a different angle on that, I recommend that.
Well, once again, thanks so much, Dennis, for coming on and helping me out with this. And to all our listeners, thanks for coming back and taking a listen. And we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.